Hello folks, welcome to IAS Academy. In this video, we will be discussing a current affair topic presented to you by your faculty Sushma KP. So what is the topic that we will be looking into today? Should HIV or AIDS testing be mandatory before a marriage? Understanding? In this, we will be discussing as to what is the background, why are we bringing this particular or what is the context behind such a statement, and what is the mandatory testing for and against points, and we will also see what is the medical and scientific dimension behind it. We will also see ethical and social dimensions, and at the same point of time we will also see what is the constitutional perspective. We will also be discussing it with respect to India's society, and also we will end it with a possible mains question. Alright. Now I mentioned the topic, I mentioned the subtopics we will be looking into. How is it relevant to your UPSC? Look at this from a GS paper 2 perspective with respect to health, governance, social justice, women rights, and GS paper 3 with respect to science and technology in health with respect to ART, antiretroviral, and then U equals U concept. We will be discussing what that is. GS paper 4, autonomy versus public good, dignity, confidentiality, stigma, and essay. The topic could also be, the essay questions could touch on the topics of health and human rights and your social reforms. Understanding? Now, coming back to the topic, why exactly are we telling HIV or AIDS testing should be made mandatory before marriage? What exactly is happening? Have we just, as per your people who speak for, yes, this is mandatory, they've told India has a concept of matching horoscopes before marriage. There is nothing wrong if they have testing with regarding to your HIV or AIDS. Why are some people claiming that statement? What has this situation emerged that they are mentioning that this has to be done? First and foremost, initially Goa had started this concept where they said that okay, we will bring in mandatory testing, and now Meghalaya has also started the same debate where they have been thinking of doing the same thing. But in order to do any of these things, right, with respect to Goa, when they introduced this concept itself, it is not still yet a reality. Now when Meghalaya is also trying to speak about the same topic, the only issue in this topic is it cannot be made mandatory as of now because of certain challenges that we have. What are the certain challenges? See, we will take that certain challenges in two perspectives. One is with regarding to your statutory law that we have, that is your HIV or AIDS Act. And another is with regarding to your Article 21, right to life, and according to your Justice Puttaswamy case. According to your Justice Puttaswamy case, we will also speak about your right to privacy and how Supreme Court held that right to privacy is part of your right to life, or Article 21. Understanding these are certain things that will be the things that we have to discuss in order to make sure whether can HIV or AIDS testing be made mandatory before a marriage. First and foremost, if you see the background, according to your UNAIDS 2022 Living with HIV report, India is affected very largely by your HIV or AIDS, where 2.4 million of Indians are affected by it. And also, how exactly does your HIV or AIDS transmit? It is because of your drug injection use, sexual transmission, and also mother to child blood transfusions. So these are the ways how it spreads. And also one thing, if you have to know, there is with respect to societal level, if you see HIV or AIDS, it has a lot of social stigma associated to it. Now before we get into the social aspects, let's see what are the legal provisions or statutory laws that are in place. We have HIV and AIDS Act 2017, which is the first comprehensive HIV law, which also speaks about, see, in this particular act, the most important thing they try to speak is informed consent and no coercion. Now, just deal with, let's deal with the first point itself, no coercion. But if you see, in reality, many hospitals do coerce the people to get it done. But what happens is, let's say a person will go to the lab, get a test done, he will be proved that he is not HIV positive. That is, he is not affected by HIV. So what happens, he will, even though he might be positive, here one of the most important thing is the duration gap, okay, or since when it has been there, that also has to be checked, otherwise he will go on spreading, yes or no. Second thing is, it is to be strictly confidential and people should not be discriminated with respect to, let's say, a health, insurance, education, employment, etc., just because someone is affected with HIV. And government has to offer free ART, that is antiretroviral therapy, and also no denial of health insurance just based on your HIV alone. Understanding? Now, coming to the state experiments, initially Goa had proposed it. Again, like I told, when the Goa had proposed it, they've been discussing it, it cannot be brought into reality. The same thing now, Meghalaya is also trying to bring the same thing. Now, if you see, why exactly Goa, Meghalaya and all are trying to speak about? Because that is the number of percentage of cases that is coming up. Recently, if you see in Meghalaya, the examples are where people who would have used it for 3 months, drug injection, right, so through that they have contracted HIV, they become sober clean, and then after 3 months they go back, again the wife is getting infected, the children are getting affected, then they are again brought back for testing. So this is creating a burden, this is creating a consentless transmission. Understanding? The reason we are telling consentless transmission is because that the person into marriage, especially in a patriarchal society, is not even having an idea of this and is getting affected because of this. Now, arguments in favor in order to do mandatory testing for HIV or AIDS before marriage is because it protects the spouse and children from and also it is an uninformed transmission that largely happens because of no fault of theirs, they are being affected by it. And also early detection, that is giving timely antiretroviral, will also help them lead a healthier life. And also it will prevent concealment, and one more important thing is try to reduce stigma to a larger extent. That is, one reason they are not coming out is social stigma, but another thing in order to try to reduce social stigma is trying to give a good amount of awareness, good counseling, a right way of showing as to how they can deal with this. See, it is still the uncurable disease that we have. But there are certain things where you, when counseled at proper stages, can make sure that it would not be a burden on you or the others. Like we started in the initial part of the video, the concept is simple. If horoscopes are matched, then why not the health compatibility? Understanding? That is why they are speaking about your HIV or AIDS testing mandatory. Now, arguments against as to why people feel like no, this should not be done is, first and foremost, this is violative of your rights, as in your right to life. Under your Justice Puttaswamy case, we held that right to privacy is part of right to life, and this forceful revealing might affect with that right. And also legal conflict is with respect to your HIV AIDS Act of 2017 has mentioned that you can only do a HIV or AIDS test only with their consent, understanding, and not of coercion. And one important thing is, there is negative results despite infection. Like we mentioned, if you just coerce someone to go get a lab test done, to say you have to get tested with HIV, they just go get a lab test done. So if you do not have a proper window period as to from when you have to look into, then even though they are infected, it might show that they are not. Understanding? Another thing is with respect to social rejection, discrimination. Why exactly do we have a lot of social stigma associated with HIV or AIDS? Is because initially it was discovered in one of the commercial sex work. So this is associated with that kind of stigmas as to, yes, HIV or AIDS means it is because of multiple sexual partners. But like we spoke about in transmission, it is different modes of transmission, and this awareness has to be brought into the people. So with respect to medical and your scientific demonstration, if you see ART revolutions, that is U equals U, undetectable, untransmittable, you try to reduce the viral load. So your U equals U means basically you are trying to reduce the viral load so as to the transmission will not take place. And according to WHO guidelines also it says about voluntarily counseling and no coercion. The same thing is held with our statutory law of HIV or AIDS Act of 2017. Other successful models, instead of coercing them or mandatorily asking, like how Goa or Meghalaya is asking, you can look for your successful models of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, where they are going for more voluntary activity, trying to spread awareness, understanding. What are the ethical and social dimensions? Autonomy, that is autonomy versus public good, meaning personal liberty and public health, it becomes a conflict. Understanding, that is where we spoke about, yes, you don't want to reveal, fine, but at the end of the day you are somewhere, if affecting other person, then their life is also getting affected. So right to marry, so under your 2017 Act they also have a right to marry, again U equals U, reduce the viral load, reduce the transmission risks. And the role of counseling also has to be based on your informed consent and also the screening for these, and make sure that they will be assisted in all of the possible outcomes and solutions that you have to provide. And constantly this is stigmatized is because the reason that they think HIV rates is spread is either through sex work, drugs, understanding, but there are a lot of different ways this is happening and a lot of vulnerable people are getting affected with no fault of theirs. So constitutional perspective, Article 21, right to life, right to health, right to dignity, right to privacy. In Puttaswamy judgment, again we said that even your medical autonomy is protected and confidentiality is also protected, which is where mandatory testing, the so-called topic that we are discussing, which is the topic of debate of discussion because of your Goa state and also Meghalaya state, violates HIV Act 2017 and Article 21. This is why it won't be able to make it mandatory in that easy manner. So what is the way forward? You increase voluntary testing, bring in good amount of awareness, like how your states such as Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and all have brought in. Increase the awareness campaign, and the policy should be more about encouraging and not coercing, and give universal ART access, create a stigma free let's say centricity around your HIV or AIDS. So what are some of the things that India can do? First and foremost, voluntary testing, right way of counseling, understanding, coercive counseling is one thing, right way of counseling is one thing. Confidentiality and awareness are to be both kept as a hand-in-hand solution, and also ART access, antiretroviral therapy access. This is very important to make sure that we deal with the situation in a holistic manner. Now let's see what is a possible mains question from this topic. Should HIV or AIDS testing be mandatory before marriage in India? Discuss in the light of public health, human rights and ethical considerations. Again we have to speak about your Goa example, Meghalaya example, then arguments in favor, arguments against, what are the ethical concerns, understanding how do we deal with the social stigma. In all these perspectives we will be seeing. Alright, with this we come to the end of the topic. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, share it along with your friends. Thank you.